ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country and around the world. I hope you had a great Independence Day week. We are back at it with a very important, inspiring, and iconic guest, a man who definitely knows a thing or two about the landscape facing independence, a man I have been honored to know for many years now from my time at IAVA. I am very proud to welcome to the program the great and powerful Senator Joe Lieberman. Welcome to Independent Americans, sir.
Hey, Paul, thank you. Thanks for that introduction. That itself was worth coming on for. but seriously, thanks for your kind words. Thanks for all your service to our country in uniform and out, including this program. It's really great to be on. And I think you're touching with your focus on independent Americans in a political sense. And what you know, Paul, is, as I like to say, the fastest growing party in America. It's not the Republicans, it's not the Democrats, it is the independents. By one recent self poll of how do you identify yourself, 49% said they were independents. And that was more than the Republicans and Democrats put together. You may ask me, how could 49% be more than the others? There was actually a couple of percent that weren't sure what they were. So that's how it happened. But anyway, great to be with you, and I look forward to our conversation.
It's great to see you. We spent a lot of time together on the Hill over the years, right, working on veterans issues like the GI Bill and VA reform and so many other things. Worked closely with your good friend, Senator John McCain, whose voice I think we really miss right now, especially on national security issues. I want to get to that. I want to talk about no labels. I want to talk about this landscape that you've really been ahead of in many ways. But I want to start with a question that we ask everyone. Where are you, sir, and how are you?
I first off, thank God I'm good. Feel good, and my wife is good. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary in March, and we've been blessed. This is our second marriage for both of us. We've been blessed with 4 children and now 13 grandchildren. 3 of our kids live right here around Riverdale, New York, which is where we are now. And we're here because they're here. And some of our grandkids are here too. So we got a lot to be grateful for. And I stay busy. It's my nature. Every now and then my wife will say to me, hey, I thought you retired. And I say, no, I just retired from the Senate. I didn't retire. So, thank God I'm able to keep active in a lot of things that matter to me and hopefully try to do a little good. Anyway, that's where I am and how I am.
Well, I'm just a bit south down in Battery Park at the other end of the city. And hopefully we can do. Hopefully we can do this in person next time. But sir, you've always been a voice of compromise, of reason, of unity. It's well documented. Your change to an independent status as a Democrat independent and running again as the Senate, working across partisan lines. I want to ask you something that's at the top of the news that we've been covering on this show, frankly, before everyone else has. The unity and the friendship that I think we saw during your time in the Senate seems to be gone, especially across partisan lines. And the weaponization almost of Senate seats is in my view, unprecedented. And in particular, we've covered Senator Tuberville, who's now, blocking hundreds of promotions at the Department of Defense in this crusade, in my view, a very extreme political crusade, and a tactic that we've never really seen before. He's blocking the commandant of the Marine Corps, critical positions. Can I ask you to react to that specifically? And frankly, yesterday he was on TV talking about white nationalism. And I think you can't mince words here. He's defending white nationalism. We've got a U.S. senator who's defending white nationalism, and as a very high-profile Jewish leader, I ask you, how do you respond to first of all what Senator Tuberville is doing to our military, and secondly, what he's saying about welcoming white nationalists into the military?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. And I can come back to how I ended up as an independent. But
Please.
I met Senator Tuberville on a trip with John McCain was actually still alive, to the Munich Security Conference, which John and I went to since the 90s. And even after I left the Senate, he used to invite me on the plane with them. I will tell you, John's sense of humor, we'd be meeting with, the president or prime minister of some other country, and at the sessions in Munich, he'd go around the room introducing the senators who were there then. And he said, you may remember Prime Minister Lieberman, Senator Lieberman, former Prime Minister Senator Lieberman, former senator. We're just very grateful to the administrators of his nursing home for letting him join us. That was this weekend. That was McCain.
Yep, that's McCain. Yep.
Now, why do I talk about this? Because when I met Tommy Tuberville, I was with McCain, and I said, well, Senator, great to meet you. Welcome to the Senate. And John said, oh, no, he doesn't want to be called senator. He wants to be called coach, because, he was the Alabama coach. Anyway, I think the coach has gotten himself into two jams with both of these positions you talk about. Okay. He's against the policy that the Pentagon announced that if you're military personnel and you're stationed in a state where you can't get an abortion under the post-Roe versus Wade,
yep.
The military, obviously you're a woman, if the military will pay for you to go to the nearest state where you can have an abortion if that's what you want to do. The coaches, Tuberville is against that. So, okay, there's a lot of ways to be against them. The most, in the good old days, senators didn't block a lot of unrelated stuff like confirmation of important military personnel, like the Commandant of the Marine Corps, but they'd introduce an amendment on the floor as part of the Defense Authorization Bill to rescind this policy and let the Senate vote. That's the way our system's supposed to work. So I think it's typical of the way the system is broken down. Look, there were always occasional filibusters, but honestly, most of the time when somebody in the Senate had a gripe, something really bothering them, it was worked out that they could bring it up on the floor in an amendment or a bill, even if they can get it out of committee. And then the Senate would work its will and then go to the House and the president would have to say. That's the way the Constitution says the system works. So I respectfully think that what Senator Tuberville is doing now is just bad for our military, even though he says it's not. On the second question, I saw briefly the exchange in that interview on TV last night is when I saw it. Oh, and I think the coach got himself into a jam. In a way, he didn't see it coming, but boy, you can't say that, which if I got it, he was saying, well, I just the white nationalists have a difference of opinion, but if they're racist, then I disagree with them. But if you're a white nationalist, you are a racist.
Right.
And by definition, that's what the name of it is. And so I hope he changes his position on both of these. It's kind of stubborn on the holding up the confirmations. My guess is that most of the Republicans in the Senate, including the leader, Mitch McConnell, are really urging him to let it go and let the military nominations be confirmed by the Senate. I think on the other one, just for his own integrity and credibility as a senator, he's got to say, I'm human, I made a mistake. I don't support white nationalism at all.
Well, he's digging in, sir. And I've called him Senator Redneck because it sounds so out of touch. The way he talks and the consistency and how he doubles down, he sounds like he's recruiting for the Army of the Confederacy, and rather than the military of 2023. So I ask you, as we'll bridge into the conversation about no labels. But I think this is an example of the frustration that many independents have right now. You see that the Republicans who are doing something that is clearly wrong, is clearly damaging, is clearly out of touch with the country. And you see the Democrats failing to do anything about it, right? So you've got the Republicans who are not censoring their own. You've got the Democrats who seem weak. So it often feels like the Republicans are wrong and the Democrats are wimps. And many independents are left asking, what do we do here? If he doesn't come to his senses, if he doesn't change his opinion, are we going to be okay with a U.S. senator blocking our military? Putin loves this. Putin and our enemies love this.
I agree.
What are we going to do here? Who's going to be the leader who takes action and does something about this?
Yeah, that's a really important question, Paul. And what we normally talk about when we talk about the way our system in Washington has broken down from the way the Constitution intended it to work and the way it worked more or less for most of our history, but it hasn't in the last couple of decades. We talk about the increasing partisanship, the failure of people to talk to each other respectfully, to negotiate a bill, to compromise. I mean, I call this centrism, and frankly, and you might call it independence. I distinguish it from moderation, because a centrist or an independent can be a little to the left, a little to the right, or maybe a lot to the left and a lot to the right. Don't want to join a political party. But the difference is they're willing to come to the center and meet with people about a given issue who disagree with them, talk it through, compromise, and get something done for the country. You never get 100% in a great democracy like ours. We're too diverse a group. Incidentally, two of the great centrists that I knew in my time in the Senate were, one was a liberal, one was a conservative. The conservative was our dear buddy friend, John McCain, but he was always willing to come to the center and negotiate. The liberal, who was really quite liberal, was Teddy Kennedy. But if you look at Teddy's record, he would compromise on his committee, particularly with real conservatives like Orrin Hatch and Mike Enzi and Judd Gregg, and they get things done. So that's one part of it. But you're watching in the Tommy Tuberville case another, which is that individual senators just stand up and stop the whole thing. I haven't thought about it, and that's unacceptable, really. It's frustrating the majority. And I haven't thought this through from a parliamentary procedure point of view, but honestly, there's got to be a way in which the two leaders, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell, can get together and say, hey, we're not going to allow this anymore. It was the first time in 100 years we haven't had a Senate-confirmed commandant of the U.S. Marine Corps, and that's unacceptable. And there's got to be what I'm saying is there's got to be a parliamentary way to force those nominations to the floor. It's time to stop deferring to one senator out of 100 for his own reasons for blocking important work from being done.
No, I hope they can find a way. I know they haven't removed a senator since the Civil War or something like that. And censure has been very unusual, but these are unusual times. It feels like so often our rules were meant for the last game and not the current game. You know, the old saying that the military was built to fight the last war, not the next war. Right. That's what it feels like. It feels like our system is broken and incapable of dealing with radicalism on both sides. And maybe that brings us back to the conversation about no labels. We've covered it on this show. I understand the upsides. I've been critical of parts of it. And I think what I want to really try to pull apart is I'm an independent, right? I'm part of that group that could potentially be attracted to this no labels effort. And I met recently with Nancy Jacobson and I shared some of my concerns. I've talked to members of your team. I've been a part of this discussion in public. And I really want to drill down on what I think is maybe the biggest challenge I've got, right? You're selling a black box. You're saying like, we've got this great idea, but we can't tell you what's inside. And we're going to tell you later. Right. And I think that's where people have the most concern beyond the partisanship, beyond the attacks on the organization. I've said before, it's like you're saying, we're going to draft a quarterback, but we're not going to tell you until draft night which quarterback we're drafting. So especially for independents who are looking for a commander in chief. We want to know, who's it going to be? And is it going to be a Republican or a Democrat? Or is it going to be someone who's authentically independent? Because that's what I really see as an independent. A lot of folks changed jerseys recently. Used to be Democrats, used to be Republicans, but there's a new generation like Mayor Bombalati that we've had on this show that were never either side. So I'm left looking for, who are the independents? Is your candidate going to be Joe Manchin with an 11% approval rating? Is it going to be The Rock, who could change everything? Or is it going to be someone like Admiral McRaven, who maybe has a shot if you execute this plan? So that's a lot to throw at you, but I hope you understand. I'm left saying, why can I support this when I don't know what it is? It often feels like, I said this to Nancy Jacobson, I think, it feels like you all are saying, we're going to invade Iraq, and we'll tell you what we're going to do with Baghdad when we get there. So right. Until I see more meat on the bone, I'm left saying, who's your guy or gal?
Yeah, no, I got it. It's a reasonable question. So here's why it's not a black box, and here's why we don't know who we're going to run, or frankly, if we're going to run. But if you want to know what our goals are, look at the dozen years of No Labels. No Labels was formed to try to give voice to the independents in America who increasingly have not been represented by the two major parties, which have been dominated by I'm going to use your word because it's a good word, the radical fringes of both parties. And the majority of the American people who are independent are, even if they're registered Democrats and Republicans, you can count them, they're independent. They haven't been represented for a lot of reasons: gerrymandering, money in politics, partisan media. We could talk about that, Paul, another time. So we formed No Labels, and we focused on Congress and presenting ideas which we thought had bipartisan support for ways to solve problems, trying to bring Republicans and Democrats together, first in each chamber, House and Senate, then from both chambers. Believe me, and I can tell you this from my time in the Senate, toward the end of my 24 years, there was very little interaction, socially, politically, whatever, between Republicans and Democrats. I mean, the thing was divided. One of the reasons John McCain and I developed such a friendship is that we were on the Armed Services Committee together. Even though we disagreed a lot on domestic policy, we were almost in total agreement on defense and foreign policy. And we traveled a lot together, mostly to visit our troops. And you're on a plane for hours, you start talking to somebody, you know what matters to them, you know what makes them laugh, the whole story. So that has not been happening. Anyway, we did that. And then we decided, look, a lot of these members of Congress and people running, they're not stepping out and doing what they think is right, letting themselves be pushed around by their parties or by interest groups, ideological or economic interest groups, because they're worried about not receiving campaign contributions in the next campaign. So we started to raise money for what we called centrist or independent Republicans and Democrats. And lo and behold, we helped elect enough of them that they came together in the House Problem Solvers Caucus in the Senate, 60 members, 30 of each party, and about 10 or 12 in the Senate, again, half from each party. And, they've been responsible for some of the few accomplishments of the last 4 or 5 years under Trump and Biden, a bipartisan infrastructure bill, some of the COVID response bills that were boxed up, some of the economic recovery bills. Anyway, that's who we are. And all of a sudden now, our members have said, wow, it looks like it's Trump and Biden again in 2024. Where's the independent vote? We don't have an option there. And we want something different. We want to change. So here's the problem that leads to what you, I understand, see as the black box. The two parties have managed to create a system where if you want to run a third ticket, you got to qualify for the ballot in all 50 states. That ain't easy. So we had to raise a fair amount of money. We have people out working, and we're doing pretty well at getting on the ballots. And we have said that the reason we're waiting, and I know what you're saying, the ticket is the black box. Truth is, we don't know who the heck will be on our ticket.
I understand that. Can I ask you though?
Let me just say, we can't decide until we know who the Republicans and Democrats nominate. We probably won't know that till next March, but we'll be ready with some alternatives. And then we're going to hold a convention in Dallas in April. And then people will see who we nominate. If we do, it's going to be bipartisan. That'll be unusual, bipartisan ticket. Frankly, all the names that you mentioned, Manchin, The Rock, I forgot who the third one was.
Admiral McCraven.
Admiral McCraven, all on the list of potentials. And each of them in their own way would bring strengths that neither Trump nor Biden bring. So the box will not be black by the time. Well, you'll have 5 or 6 months if we do this to decide whether we got a ticket that you want to support.
Well, right now, it's a very high profile, very expensive box, right? And I understand the tactical execution that is necessary. I think many of us do, but I'm still always left with who are the real independents, right? That's really, Ross Perot wasn't elected as a concept. It was a real, wasn't running as a concept. He was a real person. And I think that's really what we're looking for is an authenticity and maybe not just centrism, but none of the above. Someone that is truly an outsider candidate, someone that we can trust to be independent and not just opportunistic. I know you have elected centrists, but the reality is you've elected Democrats and Republicans. You've supported Democrats and Republicans. And I'm like many who think there is a new generation of people who have never been Democrats and Republicans, who don't want to play that game. And maybe the military, I use this as an example, is a place where someone like Admiral Stavridis or Admiral Mullen can transcend this and rebrand what independents are, because I don't think Andrew Yang or Christy Todd Whitman are the spirit animals of the truly independent people out there, right? It's someone
I totally agree with you. I think that's a really important insight. And, as we go forward, we're going to form a nominating committee. We're going to consider people. But part of it, and that's why people like the three you mentioned, I know well and just respect them all, McCraven and Stavridis and Mullen. I think any one of those could be commander in chief, and not just in a military sense because of their background, could really lead the country. It would be different. And, we've had obviously some great military leaders as president, Ulysses Grant and Eisenhower in more modern times. So, maybe that's the way we go. I want us to be really unconventional. There's a natural way in which we may drift to, some people may want us to drift to elected officials, current ones who have been centrists. But I think we got to really open up, and it'll be fresh to have a bipartisan unity ticket. Yeah. But even better if we got somebody from the outside. Look,
that's it. I honestly think that's a better pitch to independence is, hey, here's an actual independent, right? Because there's a lot of folks I don't think who understand independence. We don't think that the alternative to the two-party system is another party. That's why they're not joining forward, right? They want to be lone wolves. They want to be fought for. They want to be truly independent and above parties. So I think anybody who has any kind of party baggage, respect to you, but yourself included, right? When we see who's in it now, it's you and Larry Hogan. So we think, is it going to be one of those guys, or are they going to be able to get Admiral Stavridis? Are they going to be able to attract The Rock or something else? But in the meantime, I think many of us are left with looking for the truly independent voices and hoping that you'll support them. So I hope that wherever this ends up, if you do decide to fold it down, I've asked some of the leadership, and I'll ask you as well, I hope you'll designate some of that resources, some of that infrastructure to independent candidates. And I would say independent veterans. I think they represent independence better than anyone. And they kind of can rebrand independence beyond being spoilers, beyond being crazy, kooky people. They can represent a future of leadership. And I just hope you all will support that, especially if you decide to fold it up.
Yeah, I hear you, and I agree with you. I think you're making some really important points. Look, as you know, Paul, one of the interesting things that probably hasn't been noted enough that's happened in the last few congressional cycles is that we've had some veterans and some former members of the intelligence community who have run for the House and Senate and won. And they're making a great contribution. And frankly, we need more of that. And I think part of why they got elected was that they had the integrity and the record of patriotism that comes from having served the country and the public independence, really looking for that in public officials instead of just another politician who's looking to go to Washington, if you know what I mean.
Sir, can I ask you, just maybe wrapping up this conversation around independence?
Sure.
I think it's so important. One of the things that I've tried to elevate is telling folks to declare their independence. The first step is get out of the parties. Stop giving them your family name. You know, yes, you, like myself, I wasn't able to vote in the primary here in New York City that's going to determine our city council members a couple of weeks ago. I'm a war veteran. I'm a 9/11 first responder, and I can't vote in my primaries here in New York City, which I think is bullshit. I think it's un-American. And I think that is a message that can really, really resonate with the rest of the country. But I would ask you, do you have a pitch to folks who are in the Senate right now or who are public candidates or considering running as candidates? Can you make a pitch to them for why they shouldn't be in the two parties? And you know, you framed yourself as an independent Democrat, right? Which was a kind of a take on the brand. But now there's this new generation. Do you have a sales pitch for folks to declare their independence?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing it's hard to do because the two parties control the nominating process, except in states where they have these open primary laws where, like California, you put your name and you run, let's say, for a nomination for the U.S. Senate, and it's everybody, all parties, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, and again, I quote McCain, or vegetarians. He always used to add the vegetarians. You can run, and then the top two run it off. So that opens it up a little bit. Otherwise, it's hard because you need to form your own party, which I did in 2006 in Connecticut. You got to qualify for the ballot. Wasn't so hard in Connecticut, but it is in other states. And then you got to raise the money to run. So two things. One is, I'd say you ought to be an independent-minded Republican or Democrat if you're not going to leave the party. And remember that you get elected, as I always felt, by members of Republican, Democrat, and independent parties, if I can put it that way. You got an obligation. And regardless of who elected you, you're elected to serve the people of your district or state. And so don't go down there and just feel you got to walk the party line 100% like you're a robot. Second thing is to them, whether they're independent-minded Republicans or Democrats or independents, is just think about when you're done with your service in the Congress, you got elected, and now you're ending your career. Do you want to look back and say, well, I played it safe. I did everything the party leaders wanted me to do. I got reelected 2, 3, 4, 5 times. But honestly, what did I get done? And I think you want to be able to say, hey, I stood up and did what I thought was right for my country, for my constituents. And okay, I wasn't always beloved in my party, but that's what I did. I say one final thing. If you have the guts to run as an independent, and you can do it, you can go over all the hurdles. Honestly, I think, though it's counterintuitive, that is really what a majority of people in almost every section of America want. It's refreshing. And that's why almost 60% of the American people say they don't want Trump and Biden again, and they would be open to voting for a third-party bipartisan alternative. Now, that's for the black box. I get it. In the end, we got to tell them who's on the ticket, and it's got to be fresh and strong enough and different enough for them to say, okay, I'm with you. this is much better for the country.
Well, I view this as a movement, and I've called it the independent movement, and it's going to take, twists and turns, and it needs that structural reform on open primaries and ranked choice voting and redistricting, but it also needs leadership. And I think those leaders are starting to emerge. And you and I have worked together in the past. I hope we can work together again to support this new generation of independent leaders. They need your wisdom and your experience. You've had a tremendous life of service. And I'm very grateful for it. I know many in this country are grateful for it, especially the example and the tone you've sent, not just as a senator, but as a citizen, as a grandfather. And I hope you understand when I say, you're not done yet. We need more. We're going to need you probably even more in the next 20 years than we have in the last, because the stakes are high. Our national security continues to be at risk, and we're going to need your voice, sir.
Hey, thanks, Paul. It means a lot to me, and I take it to be a kind of order, certainly an inspiration. And I consider myself, blessed to be healthy enough and have the opportunities I do now through No Labels and some other movements that I'm part of to continue to fight for the improvement of our government. Yeah, but I tell you what gives me a lot of hope is the next generation. You're about 2 or 3 generations behind me, coming on, who are going to fight for this same independent kind of government that really puts the national interest first, as you did in your military service. So God bless you. And I really enjoyed the conversation. Let's keep in touch. And who knows, maybe we can make some big things and good things happen for America.
Thank you, sir. I'd love to do that. You've generously offered to stick around for our Patreon members for a couple of quick questions there. Thanks to them for making this possible. We've said, sir, America is not a party, it's a mission. And we're all in this together. And I'm proud to be standing by your side and look forward to finding ways to move this country, protect, defend, and improve this country. Thank you so much for your time and your leadership. I hope you'll come back again. Until then, stay vigilant, sir.
Amen. You too. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.